Hello, everybody. Today we want to take a look at calculating commissions, and you have some homework relating to calculating commissions that we talked about in class. And we want to go through that worksheet together like we normally do and just take a look at each one of those questions and break them down so that you have a good understanding of this math because it will show up on a licensing exam. And again, as always, math is about practice and repetition. So, come back and revisit this often, watch this video again often, do the questions again often. You can swap out different numbers and different percentages, and you can make your own questions in that regard. Don't feel like you have a lack of math practice because you can always do more when it comes to that. And truly practicing with it and working with it is what's going to get you over the hump as far as the math goes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you here. And we want to take a look at what we're doing with calculating these commissions. So question number one says, what's the total commission paid by the seller of 487 Oakmont Drive? So I always like to, with my math questions, as soon as I see the question word, what, how much, calculate. So what is the total commission? So that's what I'm looking for as my final answer. And I know that commissions are always going to be calculated with a T-bar, like most of our math is in this class. And I know that the commission that's going to be paid on any sale is going to be equal to the sales price, and that's going to be multiplied by the commission rate. So remember, you've always got to memorize your formulas. And the way you memorize a T-bar formula is just, I know there are three things in the formula, and you have to memorize those three things. So commissions, the three things in the formula are the sales price, the commission, and the commission rate. The sales price, the commission, and the commission rate. And just say that to yourselves until you've got it memorized. Okay, whenever I'm talking about commissions, I need the three things that are in the formula are the commission, the sales price, and the commission rate. And then the next step, and then you have the formula memorized, is to say, and the commission is on top. Of those three things, the commission is always on top. So sales price, commission, commission rate, those three things go together in the formula, and the commission is going to be on top. It doesn't matter anything else, because once you do that, you can make the formula, and you got the two things on the bottom because you've already got the one locked in on the top, and that's going to always be your formula as far as calculating commissions go. So what's the total commission paid by the seller of 487 Oakmont Drive if the seller has executed an exclusive right to sell listing agreement calling for the payment of a 5.5% total commission if the property is listed for $425,000 and sells for $437,500 to a buyer represented by a buyer's agent? So here's the thing. I know that of these two numbers, of the listed for $425,000 and sells for $437,500, I know sales price is the number that matters there, because it might sell for more than the list price, it might sell for less than the list price, but ultimately when we talk about calculating commissions, it's almost always, and will always be on the test for your purposes, and almost always this way in the real world, calculated based on what the property actually sells for, not what it's listed for. So in other words, we're going to just eliminate that listed for number. It's garbage, we don't need it. So the property sells for $437,500. Now, they've given us the total rate and they want to know the total commission. And here's the total rate. So that's just going to be a matter of plugging in this total rate right here. I want to make sure there's no gotchas in here. They've executed an exclusive right to sell listing agreement. So we know in an exclusive right to sell listing, the firm is going to be entitled to compensation under any circumstances, no matter where the buyer comes from. So we know that this amount's going to be paid. So these two things are side by side in the T-bar. That means they're going to be multiplied. So 437,500 times 5.5%. That's what we're going to type into our calculator. And remember, anytime you're using the percent button on a calculator, that is the last button you press. Do not press the equals button. Do not press anything else after you press the percent button. You're going to type it into the calculator exactly like it's written on the screen. 437,500 times 5.5%. Stop. And that equals 24,062 and 50 cents. Just always remember that with a calculator. Whenever you're using the percent button, that is the last button you press. Always do your math such that the percent button is the last button you press, and you'll be good. So 24,062.50 is the total commission paid on that transaction. Okay. Number two, it says Blue Sky Real Estate is listing a property for sale using the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Okay, so again, we got an exclusive right to sell listing agreement. So, we know that the listing firm is owed compensation under any circumstances. Okay, it's the best type of listing agreement that a firm could hope for. So Blue Sky is listing a property with an exclusive right to sell listing agreement with a 6% total listing commission, and they've agreed to compensate cooperating selling firms with 2.4% of the total sales price. Notice I'm not doing anything with those numbers yet. And here's why. I haven't found the question. I don't know what I'm being asked for. Those numbers may be garbage. They may be completely meaningless. You can't try to digest all of this until you know what you're actually looking for. So keep scanning and look for the question. So they have agreed to compensate cooperating selling firms with 2.4% of the total sales price if those firms produce a buyer for the property. Based on this information, how much? There we go. There's a question. How much is the total listing side commission? So how much is the total listing side commission? Here's what I know. I know that they're going to want me to split this commission into two pieces. I know because they're asking me about one side that I'm going to need to split the total commission into a listing side, which I always put on the left, and a selling side, which is the opposite of the listing side of the transaction. So I may as well go ahead and write that down because they're asking me about a listing side. When they're asking about one side or the other, you automatically jump to the conclusion, okay, I'm going to have to split this up. Okay. And so I know my T-bar is still the same thing. I know anytime I'm calculating a commission here, I know commission is going to be equal to the sales price times the commission rate. I know that. The question is what number I need to multiply times that sales price, because they've given me a sales price of $500,000. But the question is, what number do I need to plug in there for the rate? Because they've given me a couple of different numbers and neither one of them may be the right number. So what I need to do is start filling in over there and see if I can figure out. Here's what I know. It says there's a 6% total commission. So I'm going to put that 6% up here. And they have agreed. So it says Blue Sky Real Estate is listing a property for sale with a 6% total listing commission, and they have agreed to compensate cooperating selling firms. So they're compensating the selling firm. They're paying or sharing the selling firm with 2.4%. So I'm going to put that 2.4% on the selling side because that's what they're offering to selling firms. Well, here's the thing, folks. I know that the two sides together have to total up to 6%. They have to add up. These two sides, if we were to add them together, have to add up to 6%. So that means if the selling side is getting 2.4%, the listing side must be getting 3.6% because 3.6 plus 2.4 equals 6. They have to add up. They have to total up to each other. That's what we mean by splitting. That's what we're doing. We're splitting this into two pieces, and the two pieces, if you add them back together, have to go up to the total commission. So that means the listing side is 3.6%. Now that I've got all that filled in, I go back to my question. What are they asking me for? How much is the total listing side? So now I can clearly see what rate I need to plug into my formula. It's 3.6%. So what I'm going to type into my calculator is going to be $500,000 times 3.6%. And if you'll remember when we went through the lecture in class, I said one big hint is always when you see single digit commissions, those are meant to be multiplied times the sales price. When you see 5%, 6%, 7%, 2.4%, 2%, 3%, anything in single digits is meant to be multiplied times the sales price. Anything bigger than that, we'll talk about a little bit later as we get through the worksheet, but single digits is almost always meant to be multiplied times the sales price. So that's just kind of a hint for you, a clue that you're headed in the right direction here. So 500,000 times 3.6%, that equals a listing side, not a total commission, just the listing side of $18,000, which is what they wanted to know. They wanted to know the listing side. And of course, if they had wanted to know the selling side, we would have multiplied times 2.4% instead of times 3.6%. But they asked for the listing side, so that's what we give them. All right, number 3. It says Thomas is a provisional broker affiliated with Ace Homes of the Triangle and has taken a new exclusive right to sell listing. Okay, we know that's potentially an important thing right there. So I'm just going to highlight it, exclusive right to sell listing, which means again that the listing firm is going to be paid under any circumstances where a ready, willing, and able buyer is produced. Okay, which is good for the listing firm. Thomas is a provisional broker affiliated with Ace Homes of the Triangle and has taken a new exclusive right to sell listing in which the seller agrees to a 5% total listing commission. If Ace Homes compensates firms representing the buyer with 2.75% of the total sales price, how much, so there we go, there's our question word, okay? How much is the selling side commission? That is my clue. Selling side. I'm splitting this up. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my boxes here, and I know I'm going to have a total commission, which I'm then going to split into 2 sides. That's that word side is the dead giveaway here. And so I have my listing side and my selling side. Okay. And they want to know how much is the selling side commission owed on a $350,000 purchase. So whenever we're doing commissions, may as well go ahead and write my commission formula over here. Commission is going to be equal to the sales price times the commission rate. Okay. So they give me the sales price. They give me $350,000. That we've got. We're in good shape there. The rate, we need to do a little work. Here's what they tell me about these rates. They tell me we have a 5% total. 5% total listing commission right there. And it says Ace Homes. And you can get in the habit of labeling them in here too. Ace is the listing firm, right? It says Ace Homes compensates firms representing the buyer with 2.75% of the total sales price. So here's the real test here. Do you know that firms representing the buyer means the same thing as the selling side? You got to know that the buyer's side of the transaction is the selling side. Those ing words will get you every time. It's only the ing words that work that way. You're not looking at the beginning of the word, you're looking at the end of the word. ing, what am I doing? And if I am working on the buyer's side, I am not listing the property, I'm selling the property, because you sell properties to buyers. So the buyer's side of the transaction is the selling side. The seller's side of the transaction is the listing side. So in this case, read it again. It says the seller has agreed to a 5% total listing commission. If Ace Homes compensates firms representing the buyer, so that's the selling firm, with 2.75% of the total sales price, So here's my 2.75 right here on the selling side. How much is the selling side commission? Oh, well, let's go ahead and fill the rest in. The listing side would have to be 2.25%. And now let's look and see which one they want. They want the selling side. So what number am I going to plug into my formula over here? That's going to be 2.75%. And so my calculator math is going to be $350,000. And again, they are side by side. So that's multiplication times 2.75%. Remember, nothing else after the percent button. And that equals $9,625 for a selling side commission, or buyer's agent commission means the same thing in this case. That's how much the listing side is offering to a firm who brings them a buyer in the transaction. They're saying, we will pay you, in this case, $9,625 to help us do our job, to help us by bringing us a buyer. All right, number 4 says Zelda is purchasing property in Raleigh as a first-time home buyer. She has hired Century 21 Triangle Group to represent her in the purchase, and broker Stephen is working with her. It's a very long question. I need to find the question. Don't try to read it for detail. Find the question. Stephen has been affiliated with Century 1 Triangle for 4 years and has an 80% commission split with his firm. First big clue right there. When you see those double-digit numbers, anytime you see those double-digit numbers, big commission split numbers, a 30% split, a 50% split, a 40% split, a 60% split. Anytime you see those big numbers like that, you right away should recognize you need to do the commission tree, the full tree, and the full tree does not split the commission into 2 pieces. The full tree splits the commission into 4 pieces. So with the full tree, you're going to have the sales price all the way at the top. And then you have from there, not a very good arrow. From there, you have a total commission. So here's our total commission. And then from the total, we are going to split, and we can draw it the same way we've been drawing it. We're going to split the total into a listing side and a selling side. And then from there, we're going to continue our split. And notice I'm drawing all of this out before I ever even attempt the question. We're going to split this into a listing broker or agent, if you want to call them that, same thing. For test taking purposes, probably agent is better on the math because the math will be in the national section of the test. And then the listing firm. So that's the office split and the agent split. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. And I'm kind of out of room, so sorry about that. We've got the selling agent and the selling firm. Okay. So now let's go back and look at the question and fill this in for ourselves. Okay. It says Zelda is purchasing a property in Raleigh as a first-time home buyer. She's hired Century 121 Triangle Group to represent her in the purchase. Okay. So Zelda is purchasing. She's hired Century 21 Triangle. So if she's purchasing, then Century 21 is over here. They are on the selling side. And matter of fact, they are the selling firm. We can put them right there as the selling firm. We know that's who they are. And it says, and broker Stephen is working with her. So we can put Stephen right here as the selling agent. We know who he is. So Stephen has been affiliated with Century 21 Triangle for 4 years and has an 80% commission split with his firm. So go all the way down here to Stephen and give him 80%. We're just filling in information. Now, here's the magic. If Stephen's getting 80% of the commissions that are coming to his side, then his firm must be keeping the other 20%, because the two of those together have to add up to 100%, the whole side. Okay, so Stephen's getting 80% of the split with his firm. It says Zelda purchases a property listed by Danny of Keller Williams Elite. So here we got Danny as our listing agent and Keller Williams Elite as our listing firm for a sales price of $800,000. Okay, well, we know the sales price goes up here at the top. Keller Williams Elite is charging the seller a 5% total listing commission. So we know that 5% goes up here as the total commission on the sale, and KW has agreed they will compensate any cooperating firm who produces a buyer with 2% of the total sales price. So I want you to pay attention to that sentence right there. It says, KW has agreed they will compensate any cooperating firm who produces a buyer with 2% of the total sales price. It's the only sentence that mentions both sides of the transaction. So that's going in the middle, because that's where the two sides are. That's where you have the listing side and the selling side. So when you find that sentence that talks about both sides, Keller Williams on the listing side is cooperating with somebody else on the buyer side and offering them 2% of the total sales price. So it says here, the cooperating firm who produces the buyer gets the 2% of the total sales price. Okay. Gets the 2% of the total sales price. When you have a number like that, you're going to fill it in right here, and you know that small numbers get multiplied times the sales price. Small numbers don't fall all the way down the tree. Small numbers go directly, they skip directly to the sales price. Well, let's go ahead and fill this in. This is 3%. So here's the thing. They want to know, based on this information, how much of a commission will Century 21 Triangle earn after paying out Stephen on the transaction. So they want to know all the way down here, after they've paid out Stephen, how much they're going to earn. Well, to get there, we have to go through the $800,000 sales price. Here's the interesting thing. In this case, we get to skip the 5% total commission, because we know exactly how much of the sales price that the firm is going to receive. The selling side is going to receive 2%. So in that case, we can go $800,000. Remember, I told you small numbers get multiplied times the sales price. So don't go 800 times 5% and then times 2%, because you would never go small number times small number. It's always small numbers go straight to the sales price. Okay. So 800,000 times 2% times 20%, because you just do multiplication all the way down. So again, I'm gonna write that out on the screen. So here's what you type in the calculator: equals $800,000 times 2% times 20. And that's $3,200, $3,200. And that is how much money Century 21 right here would earn in that transaction after they've paid out Stephen. Okay. Number 5, Bobby Buyer is represented by Kim in the purchase of a home in Clayton. Kim is a provisional broker associate with Dewey, Cheatham and Howell Realty, and she has a commission split with the firm, paying her 55% of their commission on her transactions. So right there, there's my key, 55%. Those big numbers mean I got to do the whole tree all the way down to the bottom. I got to show the whole thing. So I got to start with the sales price. And then from that sales price, I know we're going to have a total commission. So I'll give myself a box for that. And then I know I'm going to be splitting that total commission into a listing side and a selling side. Okay. And then each side is going to get split again into listing agent and listing firm. Or office. And then on the selling side, we're going to do the same thing, but it's going to be selling agent and selling firm. So there we got the whole thing split out for ourselves. Now let's start to read it. And again, we knew that just because we saw that big commission split number, 55% of their commission tells me I got to do the tree. That's what I got to do. Bobby Buyer is represented by Kim in the purchase of a home in Clayton. Okay. So Bobby Buyer is represented by Kim. Kim must be the selling agent. It says Kim is a provisional broker associate with Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe Realty. So we know Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, DCH Realty. Oops. DCH Realty is the selling firm because it says they are representing the buyer. And she, Kim, has a commission split with the firm paying her 55% of their commission on her transactions. So Kim has a 55% split, which means her firm must have the other 45%, because when you got those big numbers, they got to add up to 100. Upon closing of escrow on Bobby's new home, Kim was paid a commission out of her firm's total compensation. The listing firm in the transaction has an exclusive right to sell listing. Okay, that's good. Was charging a 6% listing commission. So there's our 6% total. And it's cooperating with selling brokerages. So now we're talking about the two sides, cooperating, sharing, splitting with selling brokerages, okay, by offering 45% of the total commission to a cooperating firm. So the listing side is offering the 45%. So that goes to the selling side, which means the listing side is keeping 55% because they keep the remainder. Those two have to add up to 100% when you got those big numbers. What was the amount earned by Kim? So there's our question. What was the amount earned by Kim? And they do say to the nearest dollar, so they want us to do a little rounding. There's Kim. If the home sold for $306,397. So let me fill that in. $306,397. Basically, we need to make a path from $306,397 to Kim. To get there, we have to go through 6%. Because remember, that's the small numbers. We always have to find the small number and multiply that times the sales price. We can't multiply 45%. If we keep working our way back up, 55%, I can't multiply that times the sales price. Too big of a number. 45%, I can't multiply that times the sales price. Too big of a number. So I got to keep working my way back up. 6%, I can multiply that times the sales price. So that's the number. Work your way back up until you find that small number. Then you're ready to start your math. So what am I going to type into my calculator? I'm going to type in 306,397 times 6% times 45%. Don't skip any. Times 55%, because that's what we get all the way to Kim. And if I do that, 306,397 times 6% times 45% times 55%. And I'm going to check my math again and write it down, but I always like to type it in twice when I'm typing a bunch of numbers like that. I got 4,549.9954. So basically to the nearest, they want it to the nearest dollar. So that looks like $4,550 to me. Okay, but let me check my math again. 306,397 times 6% times 45% times 55%. Yep, same number. So 4,550. Because they want it to the nearest dollar. So $4,550. Follow the tree. Okay. All right, look at number 6. It says Renee is a broker with Sunrise Realty who earns a commission check for her firm for her representation of Sunny Seller in a transaction. Renee executed a seller agency exclusive right to sell listing agreement on which the seller was to pay Sunrise Realty a 5% brokerage commission. So I still don't know what I'm doing yet. And Renee has a 40% split. There it is. Big number. So I know that's the tree. So I may as well go ahead and write it out. So I know I'm going to have sales price. And from there, I get the total commission. Right? There's my total. And then from there, I'm going to split out into a listing side and the selling side. And then each one of those is going to get split again into agent and firm. So I got the listing agent over here. And I realize it takes a minute to map this out. But better to take a minute and actually get it right, listing firm, than to not take the minute and get it wrong. I mean, I don't recall them giving bonus points for setting some sort of a speed record on the test. I mean, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong when you come back from taking it, but my suggestion would be you have plenty of time, use it, map this stuff out, show your work. Don't be lazy. It's too much work in this class to fail because you're not willing to draw a simple map for yourself. All right, so we've got the selling agent and the selling firm. Okay, so let's read it again now that we know what we're kind of doing here. It says Renee executed an exclusive right to sell listing agreement in which the seller was to pay Sunrise Realty a 5% brokerage commission. So there's our 5% total commission. Oh, by the way, it does say Renee is a broker with Sunrise Realty who earns a commission check from her firm for her representation of Sunny Seller. So let's go ahead and fill Renee in over here. She's the listing agent, folks. Renee and then Sunrise. They're on the listing side because they're representing the seller. Okay. So Sunrise Realty is charging a 5% brokerage commission, and it says, and Renee has a 40% split of all commissions earned with her firm. So Renee gets the 40%, which means her firm must get 60% of those commissions that come in on their side. This is Sunrise Realty has a firm policy of paying a cooperating selling firm 60% of all listing commissions. So Sunrise actually gives away more than they keep because they pay the selling firm 60%. Well, don't argue with them. Just do what they say. 60% over there means 40% over here. Don't assume, do what they say. When Sally purchased a home listed by Sunrise for $981,250. So there's my sales price, $981,250. With the help of a buyer representative, what was Renee paid? So that finally, there's our question. What was Renee paid? So they want right there. They want that right there. So how am I going to type that into my calculator? Well, I have to work my way back up. From Renee, I'm working my way back up 40%. I cannot multiply 40% times a sales price. It's too big of a number. So I got to keep going up. 5%. I can multiply 5% times the sales price. It's a small single-digit number, so I know the next stop is my sales price. So I'm going straight from that 5% to the sales price. So what I'm going to type into my calculator is going to be 981,250 times 5% times 40% times 40% equals. So 981,250 times 40%, excuse me, times 5% first, times 40%. Looks like $7,850, but hold on while I check that again. You should always do that yourself as well when you're typing a bunch of numbers into a calculator. 981,250 times 5% times 40% times 40%. Yes, $7,850 is what Renee is going to earn on that transaction. Renee personally will earn $7,850. Okay, number 7. It says Elmer is selling his home so he can afford the down payment on his new home in Chapel Hill. He must first use the sales proceeds to pay off his existing mortgage balance of $287,450. Okay. He will also owe $3,850 in outstanding property taxes, as well as $400 in attorney's fees. Again, I'm looking for the question. Elmer has agreed to compensate the firm listing his home with a total listing commission of 6% of the sales price. Based on this information, how much will Elmer net? There it is. Finally, question. The question, how much will Elmer net at closing? So they're telling us he's selling the home for $443,000, and they want to know how much he's going to net. Well, a net, literally, a seller net, folks. Net just means after all expenses are paid. So this is where we come up in real estate closings with the idea of debits and credits. Now, I realize you can take the purchase price and just start subtracting numbers, but it will be much better for you later on when we get to closing the transaction if you start to think of things in terms of debits, and debits equal money owed or debts. And then also think of credits. Credits equals money coming. These are pluses. And if you will start to think of these in those terms, it'll be much easier to calculate what Elmer's net is here by simply putting things in columns of credits and debits. So what we want to do now is just go through and see what each one of these is. Is it a credit or is it a debit? He must first use the sales proceeds to pay off his existing mortgage. Well, if he's paying it off, folks, that's not a good thing. That's not money coming to him. That's not a plus. That's a debt that he owes. So we're going to put that $287,450 over here as a debit. It says he will also owe, sounds like a debit to me, $3,850 in outstanding property taxes, as well as $400 in attorney's fees. So he owes $400 in attorney's fees. That also sounds like a debit. It says Elmer has agreed to compensate the firm listing his home with a total listing commission of 6% of the sales price. So we got to do some math on that one. We got to do some math, and I'm just going to do it up there at the top. Well, if the sales price is $443 right here, I'm going to say $443,000 times the 6%. And let's see how much commission that is. That's $26,580 in commission. But when you think about a commission for a seller, that's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. A commission for a seller is a bad thing. So we're going to put that in the debits. 26,580 as a debit. But, and then the only credit, the only number we haven't dealt with at all is the actual sales price there. And so the sales price is going to be the only one we're going to put over here in the credits, 443. Once you've got those numbers in the correct columns, it's just a matter of totaling your columns up. Well, the credits are easy. Total credits is just 443. Okay. Let's look at the debits. We got to total, we got to do a little math on those. So 287, 450 plus 3850 plus 400. So again, we're just adding these up right here. Okay. Plus 26,580 equals, looks like to me, if I add all those up, I got 318,280 total debits. I'm gonna check my math again. 287, 450 plus 3850 plus 400 plus 26,580, 318,280 total. Folks, just take that number over here and subtract it. So minus 318,280 in debits. So your credits minus your debits. And that's going to tell you exactly how much money Elmer can expect to walk away with or net. And that's $124,720 in this question. Elmer should expect $124,720 when he walks away from that closing. And that's the better way to do it with credits and debits, because it'll start to get you prepared for closing statements as we make our way through the class. Okay. Number 8 says Sandra is selling her parents' home in Mebane and wishes to know how much she will net from the sale after all expenses are paid. So again, she wants to know that net after expenses are paid. As part of liquidating their estate, she contracts with Mebane Exclusive Properties to list the home at a 5% commission rate. Her parents have an outstanding reverse mortgage balance of $118,627, outstanding property taxes of $2,300, and there are attorney's fees totaling $2,100, which must be paid. Based on this information, what will Sandra's net proceeds be if she sells the property for $418,000? So it is the exact same question we just had. What will Sandra's net proceeds be if she sells for $418,000? So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to set up our, sorry, I didn't mean to do it that. We're going to set up our two columns here, and we're going to have on the left-hand side our debits. And on the right-hand side, we're going to have our credits. So let's start going through this. Sandra is selling her parents' home in Mebane and wishes to know how much she will net from the sale after expenses are paid. As part of liquidating their estate, she contracts with Mebane Exclusive Properties to list the home at a 5% commission rate. So 5%. Well, if we do that math over here on the side, 5% of the sales price, that's going to be $418,000. Change pen colors here, since it's going to be a debit. So $418,000 times 5%. That's $20,900 in commission. Well, we already talked about the fact that commissions are definitely debit. So that's the first debit I'm going to put over here, $20,900 for commissions. Seller's got to pay that. It says her parents have an outstanding reverse mortgage balance of $118,627. Folks, it doesn't matter if it's a reverse mortgage, a home equity line, primary mortgage, it doesn't matter. All mortgages have to be paid off when you sell the property because they're liens. And we've got to satisfy those liens. So we're going to add that as a debit here, $118,627, pay off the mortgage. Outstanding property taxes of $2,300. That's also a debit. And their attorney fees totaling $2,100, which must be paid. All debits. What will Sandra's net proceeds be if she sells her property for $418,000? Well, that's the only credit they give us. So we're going to put that over here as a credit. Well, we know our credits. That's $418,000 total. Let's total up our debits over here on the left-hand side. We got $20,900 in commission plus $118,627 for the mortgage plus $2,300 for taxes plus $2,100 for attorney. Got $143,927. I'm gonna check my math again. Okay, 2,900 plus 118,627 plus 2,300 plus 2,100, 143,927. Well, again, total debits minus or subtracted from total credits will give us the net on the transaction. So we do that. $418,000 minus $143,927. That means Sandra, after she sells her parents' property, is going to net $274,073. $274,073 as far as a net. Okay, number 9. Travis is purchasing a home in Chapel Hill with Diane of Keller Williams as his buyer representative. The home is listed by HPW for a 7% total commission, and HPW splits their brokerage fees evenly between the listing side of the transaction and the selling side of the transaction. If Diane has an agreement paying her 75%, right there's a big warning flag, right? Or a big key. See that big commission split number? I know I got to do the tree. I know this is going to be a question where I've got to do the tree. Give myself some room here to work. So I may as well go ahead and map it out. Let me go ahead and get the thing drawn out so I'm ready to go. I know we got the sales price up here at the top. I know from there, we've got the total commission. Go ahead and get that in. I know that total is going to get split into a listing side and a selling side. And then each one of those is going to get split again into the listing agent and listing firm. And then down here, selling agent and selling firm. Okay, now I'm ready to go. Travis is purchasing a home in Chapel Hill with Diane of Keller Williams as his buyer representative. Okay, right there, I've got some information. Diane is the buyer representative. She's representing Travis, who's purchasing. So she must be the selling agent. Let's go ahead and list her here. Diane, selling agent. And her firm, Keller Williams, must be the selling firm. It says the home is listed by HPW, so put them over here on the listing firm, for a 7% total commission, and that goes up there at the top. And HPW splits their brokerage fees evenly between the listing side of the transaction and the selling side of the transaction. Now, evenly, folks, I would just do 50% on either side. I wouldn't try to do the math. I think that makes it harder on you. Just do the 50%. It says if Diane has an agreement paying her 75% of all her commissions earned, so there's Diane, give her 75%, means her firm must get 25%. What is her firm's share of the selling commission for the transaction if the home sells for $472,000. Well, let me go ahead and fill that in, 472. And there's my question. What is her firm's share of the selling commission? So Diane's firm's share is right there. So working our way back up to get to the 472, go back up and we get to that 50%, which means we got to go through it. Do we take the 50% and multiply it times the sales price? No, too big of a number. We got to keep working our way back up the tree. We get to 7%. That's a number I can multiply times the sales price. So there's my path right there. So what I'm going to type into the calculator is going to be 472,000 times 7% times 50% times 25%. I'm never going to hit equals at all the whole way through. So 472,000 times 7% times 50% times 25%. And I'm going to check my math again, but I came up with $4,130. Let's check my math, make sure I'm right. 472,000 times 7% times 50% times 25%. Yep, $4,130. And just remember, I know it's hard to discipline yourself out of it. Don't hit the equals button, because if you hit the equals button, you're going to get a different answer. And it's not right. Percent button, that's it. You stop right there. So $4,130 is what Keller Williams is going to earn on that transaction. Okay. Number 10 says Travis sells his home for $376,801.51. The home is listed with URE at a 6% total commission. He must pay off his outstanding mortgage balance of $220,000, closing costs of $5,000, and a mechanics lien of $4,200. He also must pay excise taxes at the standard rate. We haven't covered excise taxes yet, so for your purposes in this question, I just crossed that out for right now. That's my mistake for leaving that in the question, so just leave that out for right now. If you did it in the question, send me your answer separately. If you got really adventurous and tried to look up how to do excise taxes, that's fine. You don't need to, and you won't be asked to on the test in this way, so don't worry about that. Because excise taxes is a North Carolina specific thing, and I just need to delete that from the math question. But just it's there, but don't worry about it. Travis sells his home for $376,801.51. The home is listed with URE at a 6% total commission. He must pay off his outstanding mortgage balance of $220,000, closing costs of $5,000, and a mechanics lien of $4,200. What amount should he expect to receive after closing as net proceeds? Okay, what amount should he expect to receive as net proceeds? Well, there's that question. A net, a seller net. So that tells me I'm going to be dealing with debits and credits, right? When they ask me, what is he going to net? What is his net? They're not telling me he needs to net a certain amount. They're saying it sells for this amount, and how much is he going to net? So that tells me I need to go ahead and set my columns up with my debits and my credits. Okay. So I'm going to take a look here. Let's go ahead and label them debits, and I do those in red, and then I'll do my credits in green. Okay. Travis sells his home for $376,801.51. That sounds like a credit to me. That's good. That's money coming in for Travis. So $376,808.51. That's a credit. The home is listed with URE at a 6% total commission. Well, that's going to be a debit for that commission. So let's go ahead and put a placeholder here for ourselves. Okay. But let's do the math. 376,808.51 times 6% for the commission. I come up with 22,608 and about 51 cents. 5106 if you want to be really accurate, 51 cents. So for commission, I got 376, 808. Oops, sorry, I'm writing the sales price down. Easy to do. That's why you label things, right? Sorry, commission, I got 22,608 and about 51 cents. Okay, as a debit. He must pay off his outstanding mortgage balance of $220,000. Okay, well, that sounds like a debit to me. He's got to pay off that $220,000 as well. Mortgage. He's got closing costs of $5,000. That sounds like a debit to me. Just put CC for closing costs. And he's got a mechanics lien of $4,200. He didn't pay some contractor, so he's got a lien on there for that. So we'll just put mechanics there. That's also a debit. So if we total all those up, I get 251, 808, and 51 cents for total debits. And of course, total credits is the 376, 808, and 51 cents because there's only the one credit over there. And now I know I bring my debits over and I'm going to subtract them. And once I do that, looks like to me 124,999.9994 or just $125,000 for net proceeds. Okay. All right, let's look at number 11 here. It says Lisa is selling her home with the help of a real estate brokerage firm and has signed an exclusive right to sell listing agreement, promising a 6% total commission on the sale. The sellers have an outstanding mortgage of $218,500, property taxes owed of $3,850, and must pay attorney's fees of $200. Based on this information, what can the sellers expect to net on the sale if the property sells for $445,000? So again, same question, what can the sellers expect to net if the property sells for a certain amount? So they've given us that sales price. What they want us to do are the debits and credits associated with that transaction so we can figure out how much money the seller is going to walk away with. So let's take a look at it. Okay, let's talk about Lisa's transaction here. And we're just going to work through these numbers one by one. It says she has signed an exclusive right to sell listing agreement. So it means she pays under any circumstances where the property closes. Promising a 6% total commission on the sale. Okay, well, 6%, that number is going to get tied to the sales price to come up with a commission. So let me do that math over here, okay? And I may as well do it in red because I know it's going to be a debit for commission. So $445,000 times 6% for the commission. That's $26,700 in commissions. That's our first debit in the transaction. $26,700. And I know there's a tendency sometimes to start picking and choosing and pulling in numbers and wait. I try to work through them one by one as they give them. That way you can kind of cross it out. Okay, I've dealt with that one. It says the sellers have outstanding mortgage of $218,500. So I know they're going to have to pay that off. $218,500 is a debit. So I've dealt with that one. Property taxes are owed of $38.50. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the debit column here as well. and must pay attorney's fees of $200. So that's going to go as a debit here. Based on this information, what can the sellers expect to net on the sale if the property sells for $445? Well, there's my credit. So I know my total credits are $445. And trust me, as we get to a little bit more complex closings, yes, there can be more than one credit. So there will actually be a time when you need to actually add a couple numbers together over there. That's why I'm saying total up your credits, even though it's obviously only one number now. And that's why we do debits and credits rather than just purchase price minus all these numbers. Because when you have a real closing, you'll have several debits and several credits, and you just need to get them in the correct places so that we can get them totaled up appropriately and get the final number. So when we total up our debits, I got 26,700 plus 218,500. So again, what I'm doing is just adding these numbers together, plus 3,850 plus 200. That is 249,250 for total debits, which again, we're just going to bring over here and subtract from our total credits. And that will give us a final seller net of about 195,750 for a net. $195,750 for a net on that question. Okay. All right, take a look at number 12. It says Jace is thinking of listing her home for sale, but knows she needs the net $250,000 on the transaction. So they're not asking us the net. They're saying she knows she needs to net. A little bit different question. A lot different question, actually. But just pointing that out. She needs to net. So they've given us basically the answer we just came up. They're giving us that answer now. She needs to net $250,000 on the transactions after all expenses are paid. She currently owes $178,500 on a mortgage note, as well as $4,800 in outstanding ad valorem property taxes. If she were to contract to pay a listing firm 5% of the total sales price as a commission, what would she need to sell her property for in order to satisfy her needs in the transaction? Well, there's our question. What would she need to sell her property for in order to satisfy her needs? So when you have a question like this, I call this the reverse seller net. You're working in reverse because they've given you the net. So start with the net. Since you're working in reverse, we're going to start with, well, she needs at least $250,000. But she also needs to pay off that $178,500 mortgage. And she needs to pay off the $4,800 in taxes. Plus, she needs to pay something in commission. And if you were able to add all that up, you would know what she needs to sell the property for. The problem is that commission one. This one down here at the bottom is a problem for us. But there's a solution. Total it up without worrying about the commission. So we're going to add all those numbers together. 250,000 plus 178,500 plus 4,800. That's 433,300 without commission. So that's not quite what we need to sell for, because that doesn't take into account our commission. So let's talk about how we're going to deal with that commission part. I want you to think of the transaction as like a pie. The seller would like to eat 100% of the pie. The whole pie is 100%. And the seller would like to eat the whole thing, but they don't get to, because they decided to give away a small slice of the pie. They decided to give away 5% as commission. So there's that 5% slice that's coming out as commission. Well, if you're doing the math just quickly, that means the seller gets to eat or keep 95%. And here's the final math step. And honestly, it's one of those things when you're doing a reverse seller net, I think you just need to memorize this step. For a reverse seller net question, what you're going to do is take that number that we totaled up, that number we came up with earlier, the 433, 300, and you're going to divide it by, because the seller had to divide up the pie, whatever the seller was left with after they divided the pie. They divided the pie up into 2 slices, and they got to eat the 95% slice. So that's what we're going to divide. That was their slice of the pie. So 433, 300 divided by the 95, and then the percent button, stop. That's your last button press. Whenever you press the percent button, they need to sell this property for $456, $105, and about 26 cents in order to satisfy their needs. For them to net $250,000 on that property, they need to sell that thing for a little more than $456,000. That's again a reverse seller net. Okay, let's take a look at the next one here. Give myself some working room. It's easier to keep one per page. D is giving a listing presentation to the owner of a farm in Cumberland County and offers to list the property for a 6% total listing commission. The seller immediately informs D that they would only sell the property if they could clear $75,000 after the sale and all expenses are settled. The seller has a first mortgage note outstanding of $215,000, as well as 2 mechanics liens on the property totaling $17,850. Knowing all of this information, what is the lowest pricing D could recommend? There's our question, what, right? What is the lowest pricing D could recommend for the transaction in order to satisfy the goals of the seller? We are right back to that reverse seller net. They told us what the seller needs to net, what they want to clear, what they want. So they need, and start with what they need that $75,000. But they also need to pay that 6% commission. Unfortunately, I can't do the math on that one because I don't know what the property sold for. They need to pay off that mortgage note of $215,000. That one I do know. Okay. And they have 2 mechanics liens that they need to pay off of $17,850. Well, again, same situation. I can't do anything about that commission, but I can total up the other ones. So if I add the other ones together, 75,000 plus 215,000 plus 17,850, I come up with needs of 307,850 without commission. And they didn't ask us about without commission. What they said is how much they need to sell the property for, period. So that's where we've got to think about the whole pie. And remember, the whole pie is 100%. The seller would like to eat 100% of the pie, but they don't get to because they gave away a slice. They gave away a 6% slice, which means the seller is keeping a 94% slice. So what's our final math going to be? It's always going to be to take the seller's needs, which are 307,850, and divide, because the seller had to divide the pie up, divide it by the seller's share of that pie. And they need to sell that property for a grand total of $327,500. If they sold that property for $327,500, they would be satisfied. They would walk away with their $75,000 that they need to clear. So you can see how that'd be useful for a listing agent, because a lot of times sellers will tell you, well, I need this much money. And so that way we could look and see if that's realistic. 14 says, Al has listed a piece of vacant land for sale with a commission agreement that calls for a 5% commission to be paid on the first $3 million. I think I know what I'm going to be doing here based on that, but I'm going to keep reading. 7% commission to be paid on any portion of the sales price between $3 million and $4 million. Now I know what I'm doing. I know now for sure I'm doing multiple commission rates or pieces. In other words, this is going to be a transaction that I'm going to have to calculate the commission in pieces and then combine the pieces. I'm going to have to separate this essentially into two or three, depending on what number of commission splits they give me. I'm going to have to separate this into pieces. So let's quickly read through and see how many pieces we find. I see a 5% commission. Let me do that. 5% commission to be paid on the first $3 million. There's that. And then I see a 7% commission to be paid on any portion between 3 and 4 million. There's that. And then I see a 10% commission to be paid on any portion of the sales price that exceeds 4 million. That looks like 3 different commissions to me, 3 different transactions. So this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself a box for each one. Here's my green box. Here's my yellow box. And remember, you're doing a dry erase board, so you can have multiple color markers if you want to. That might help on the test for something like this, especially. I'm doing a blue box. I'm essentially going to do 3 different commissions here, and then I'm going to combine them. I like to start with the big one first, the big one being the higher number, the number that favors me the most. So I'm going to start with the 10% one. You can start with whatever piece you want to. I like to start with the 10% one. It says 10% commission to be paid on any portion of the sales price that exceeds $4 million. Okay, so I need to know, so this is 10%, but exceeds 4 million. That's the only part of the transaction that I'm going to get paid that amount of money on. Okay, so look, it says the property was listed for $4,750,000 and sells for $4,500,000. So I got to use the sales price. So if I quickly look at that, I'm only going to make that 10% commission on the amount that exceeds. So write down the sales price here, $4,500,000, and then take away the part that I don't get paid for in this box. I don't get paid for that 4 million because it says I only get that on the part that exceeds 4 million. So that's going to be 500,000 times 10% in that box. All right, now that I've seen the high end, I like to do the low end, and then I'll kind of fill in the middle and see what I'm missing, what I'm not getting paid on. So I'm going to go to the blue one. It says 5% commission. So I'm going to make a note of that for myself, 5% on the first 3 million. Well, that's just going to be 3 million times 5%. For that math, that one's easy. 3 million times 5%. There's my first 3 million. So I've taken care of that one. So here's the thing. Now I need to figure what goes in the yellow box. Now, what do they tell me? They tell me it's 7% for anything between 3 million and 4 million. Well, I can see that based on the boxes I've already got. I've already been paid on the first 3 million, so I'm not going to get paid on that again. I've already been paid on the amount above 4 million, so I'm not going to get paid on that again. So I only need to get paid on what's between those two. Folks, that's $1 million. So how did I do that? I'm going to show you in math. But here's how I did that. I'm sitting there looking, and I'll get a different pen color here so you can kind of sort of see. I'm sitting here looking and saying, okay, up to 3 million, stop. Above 4 million is taken care of. So I only need what's between those two. That's 4 million minus 3 million. So my gap is $1 million. That's where that comes from. So my math over there is going to be 1 million times, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do red. I changed my pen color. There we go. 1 million times the 7%. Now that I've got each one of those boxes figured out, let's do the math and let's add them up. So let's do the math and add them up. Create a blue box, a yellow box, and a green box. And then we're going to add them together. Okay. So here we go. 3 million times 5%. That's $150,000. Okay. 1 million times 7%, that's $70,000. 500,000 times 10%, that's $50,000. And now just add them together. So if I do 150,000 plus 70,000 plus 50,000, that equals a total commission of $270,000 on that transaction. Now I will tell you, and I mentioned this in class when we went over it, this is an exceptionally complex commission question. You should only even attempt one like this if you've mastered everything else on this worksheet. So everything else above this on the worksheet is far more important than this, because this may or may not ever show up on an exam. But this is like the one you should only tackle once you've absolutely, you can get every single one of the other ones right, because it's much easier to master the other ones. Do those first. You're going to see those for sure on the test. Do not spend a long time on this, because you're probably not going to see it to enough of an extent that it's going to matter very much. But if you've mastered everything else, go ahead and knock these out too. Okay. All right, look at number 15. It says a seller of a commercial warehouse wishes to reward his listing agent for bringing a higher offer price. In order to accomplish this, the seller has agreed to pay a 6% commission rate on the first $1 million of sales price and an 8% commission rate for any amount of sales price that exceeds $1 million. The property is listed for $2,420,000 and sells for full price. What's the total commission owed by the seller? This one looks like to me is in two pieces, but let's be sure. It says the seller has agreed to pay a 6% commission on the first $1 million and an 8% commission for any amount that exceeds $1 million. That looks like two boxes to me. So there we go. Yellow box, green box. Okay. So let's make some notes for myself. The green box, 6% on the first $1 million. The yellow box, 8% on the exceeds $1 million. I always like to do that top one first. So I'm going to do the 8% first. On any amount of sales price that exceeds $1 million, it says it sells for full price. it sells for $2,420,000. Well, it would be nice if we got that on the full amount, but it exceeds, it's only on the amount that exceeds it. So we're going to look at $2,420,000, but we got to get rid of the $1 million that we're not going to get paid on here, because we only get that on the amount that exceeds it. So that's going to be $1,420,000 times the 8% rate. And then we got 6% on the first $1 million. So that takes care of that $1 million that we just knocked out over there. We're ready to do some math and add these up. So for the green one, I got 6%, 1 million times 6%, that's $60,000. Plus, and now my yellow box over here, I've got 1,420,000 times 8%. That is 100. Oops, sorry. Change pen. That is $113,600. So if I add those together, that is a total commission of $173,600. Total commission to seller with it. Folks, that takes us through the whole math worksheet. And that's a really, really in-depth sort of journey through calculating commissions and how much a commission would be and how they could ask different types of commission questions. Go back through these. You will see. Now, I don't know if you'll see the multiple commission rates, that the last two questions, but the other ones for sure, you'll see on the licensing exam. So make sure you are familiar with them and you go back through them and you get this really sort of nailed down for yourself, because it is going to be important on the test. Thanks and have a good day. Have fun studying.